One unique thing which I would like to add is the reverse supply chain.
Okay.
Typically, in pharma industry, whenever there is a product onto the shelf and it is not sold, either because it is expired or it is near expiry, or it may have a quality complaint. Now, this is the time when supply chain has to make sure that they pick up all these products from the complex network, from thousands of retailers, distributors, wholesalers, CNFAs, bring it back and dispose it off. That's another challenge of reverse supply chain.
Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. If you're new to our channel, please consider subscribing to it and hit the bell icon so that you never miss an update. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm privileged to welcome a very, very senior and well-known supply chain leader, Mr. Govind K. Jaju. Govind, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh.
Govind is the former global supply chain head of Ranbaxy, handling over 100 markets in the world. He's, after Ranbaxy, the founding partner of Singora Consulting LLP, which is an advisory services for the pharma sector, and he's been a supply chain expert for the last 4 decades. So, Govind, as I had mentioned to you, I'm doing a special series of interviews with supply chain gurus, and you are one of the supply chain gurus. So, we're going to focus primarily on the supply chain industry today. And, you have been a part of the pharma industry. So my first question to you is that what are some of the unique supply chain challenges the pharma industry faces?
Every supply chain has some unique challenges. Correct. And so is pharma. But when I look at the pharma supply chain, I feel there are 4 unique challenges which pharma supply chain has. And that obviously comes from the pharma industry. One is quality focus.
Right.
Second is complexity. Third is regulatory. And fourth is patents. Now, these are something which are characteristic of pharma industry, and therefore the supply chain is built around that. Now, if I had to explain let's say one by one, since the medicines deal with a human life, the quality is utmost important.
Correct.
And it's not only the quality while manufacturing, the quality of to maintain that quality of the product so that they are efficient till the time they are consumed by the patient is the responsibility of the manufacturer. And so is the supply chain. Right. Now, what comes into that? Let's say simple thing like ensuring that the storage is at the right temperature, ensuring that the storage humidity is right. Now, managing this storage and particular temperature, it's something which you need to create infrastructure, whether it is warehouse, whether there are fleets which has a controlled temperature. So that's one. Second, I told you about complexity. Pharma is typically where you have huge number of SKUs. That's a field where you have lot of products packs. Maybe at the cost or the price per pack is low, and therefore managing those many packs, either in terms of establishing their demand or forecasting their demand, manufacturing, and then satisfying the demand is also another, I would say, unique trait of it. Now, when it comes to regulatory, and I'm specifically talking in terms of global supply chain, when we were dealing with 100 different countries or more than 100 countries, now there is a simple law that if you want to sell your product in any country, that product has to comply with the law of the land, which means whatever is those countries' law, your product needs to comply. And therefore, you will end up having multiple product packs of your product, huge number. Okay. And along with that also comes a lot of other regulatory restriction, be it approval by those countries, plant approval, product approval, so on and so forth. The fourth one I would say is typically pharma industry is controlled by patents. We all know that each and every drug is innovated by some innovator. And when he does that, he protects his product by way of putting multiple patents. But the day comes when the patent gets expired, and that's an opportunity Indian pharma companies have where they can go and sell their product.
Right.
That creates a lot of challenge, even for the supply chain. Just to give an example, like when you want to sell a product in Europe, day one product, because that is where the value is, you are supposed to be reaching the product on the second day, next day after the patent gets expired, and you are not allowed to enter that product into the country even one day before. Forget the country, even you cannot enter the airspace of that country.
Wow.
Which means you manufacture the product, you put it into the flight in such a way that the flight enters the airspace of the European country after 12 o'clock in the night.
Wow.
In next 6 to 8 hours, you do custom clearance, you do complete distribution so that the product is ready when the distributor comes and opens his shutter next day. Now that's the type of challenges, I would say.
Amazing. And then there is another.
One unique thing which I would like to add is the reverse supply chain.
Okay.
Typically, in pharma industry, whenever there is a product onto the shelf and it is not sold, either because it is expired or it is near expiry, or it may have a quality complaint. Now, this is the time when supply chain has to make sure that they pick up all these products from the complex network, from thousands of retailers, distributors, wholesalers, CNFAs, bring it back and dispose it off. That's another challenge of reverse supply chain.
Fascinating. In fact, this reverse supply chain is probably unique only to the pharma industry, isn't it?
Exactly.
Fascinating.
Right.
So moving on now, given all the challenges that we are facing because of the pandemic, how are supply chain leaders rethinking their strategies?
I think the biggest challenge, or rather a lot of new things which have come to know or which have gone through during this pandemic. Let me just take one by one. Let's say during pandemic, there had been many drugs where the demand shot overnight. Obviously, because everybody wanted those products. And it was so high that even many companies tried to manufacture the product. It was still there was a stock out. Not that people did not try, but this is a unique case in India Pharma. When you are trying to manufacture something or quickly, it's not only the formulation capacity, the formulation supply chain matters. It also the API supply chain which matters. Many of the APIs today, we are dependent on other countries, specifically from China, where you get either API, or if you are making API in India, you are getting either advanced intermediate or a key starting material or some basic material from China. Unless you get that material, then you manufacture API, then you manufacture formulation. The time taken is so much that you cannot avoid a stock out. So this is one big learning for all of us during COVID, is that we need to reduce our dependency, specifically on China.
Correct.
That's a big learning also. Second learning is, as the vaccines came up, India is definitely having good pull chain network. But when the vaccine came, where they had to be stored between 2 to 8 degrees, and it's not only storage, it's a transportation, not only to the metros, but it had to be reached to every small village in the country. I think that is where the cool chain effectiveness came. But I am also happy, let's say, because at the end of nearly 1.5 years or 1 year, 3 months, that as in India, we've been able to deal with both the things quite good. Today, vaccines are there, they have been moving throughout the country. And apart from that, when it comes to China, we also had the border dispute issue. I think government as well as industry has realized that we need to reduce our dependence on China.
Absolutely.
In last 1 year, government has done many things, whether it is PLI scheme, whether it is technology parks, they have come out with for mass consumption product. There are other products where industry themselves are now getting into manufacturing themselves.
Correct. And these are the APIs that we had almost handed over 20 years ago to China.
Right. Exactly. In fact, I still recall, since I was in the industry from 1976 onwards, that was the time when India had sufficient APIs. The manufacturing capability of India of API was really good.
Correct.
But as we got into globalization, somewhere in, I think, 1990s, and where this, you can say, non-tariff barrier reduced, even in tariff also, there was a restriction how much tariff you can quote.
Hmm.
It opened up the doors for imports of a lot of APIs. And China took that advantage.
Yeah.
China then became very strong in API, starting material, advanced intermediate, everything. And apart from their own capability of mass production, which India doesn't have. India mostly believes in small scale, and China believes in the large scale.
Right.
But from that, government helped them in terms of either subsidies or giving them incentives. So much so that the price which is offered by Chinese manufacturer was lower than the cost of India's manufacture. That resulted into shutting down many API plants across India, slowly increasing the imports from China. Ashutosh, you will wonder, in 1990, our imports from China was just 1%.
Wow.
In pharma space. And today it is about 70%.
My goodness.
With 70% dependence on one country, imagine you have a border dispute, imagine you have COVID, the entire industry is exposed.
I agree. Yeah. I agree. Very well said. Very, very well said. So let's move on. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about technology.
Right.
When I was growing up and I started working in 1979, we used to basically have a chief accountant, a purchase manager, and a personnel manager. And you may identify, you're younger than me. Right. But today, they've become CFO, the CHRO, and the chief supply chain officer.
Right.
What has changed in the role of the chief supply chain officer? That he's now a C-suite, he or she is a C-suite officer now.
I think you well said, exactly. And when I look back my career, when I joined industry in 1976, we had, in our company, we had just one person, maybe supported by one or two clerks as a purchase manager, and he will manage everything. He will do production planning, he will do procurement, he will do everything. Because things were very simple, fixed procedure, your material is available. Typically, there was not much pressure onto the cost. So you have your regular suppliers, you tell them the quantity. There is an expectation that prices will rise over the year. The budget always used to be inflationary budget for purchase. And you say 2%, 5%, 10% increase, which I have to give, and you manage it. From that, now look at it, and just to add to that, if suppose for some reason you are one of the suppliers is not been able to supply, what you need to do is get hold of another supplier, take some sample, give it to quality control, he will test and he will say, okay, you get the material.
Right.
Today the things have changed completely opposite direction. When you say chief supply chain officer, within that, let's talk about procurement. Today, procurement is completely controlled by regulatory. Your specifications have become very stringent. You cannot add a vendor overnight. If you are manufacturing a product for a market like US, first thing is your vendor has to be approved by US FDA. Second thing is, still you cannot use it. Still, you need to take that product, work out the product, do the stability study, so many things. It takes from 6 months to anywhere between 2 years to add a new supplier. That much difficult is the procurement. Now, let's look at supply chain as overall. Today, what is the focus? It's not that you can give any money. Today, with the competition, so much is coming. There is so much pressure on the bottom line. In fact, the profitability, major part of profitability comes from procurement.
Correct.
Here's the cost saving. All the budgets in last 15 years of my career were less than the earlier year. And there was an expectation that you should buy at a lower cost. So that's one part. Second part is, because there is a competition, there is a huge expectation on the service improvement. The servicing has to be improved because otherwise somebody else will take the money. When the patient walks into the store, if your product is not there, he's not going to wait. He's just going to buy another product. You can't allow it to. So all that has resulted into a huge complexity, huge challenging job in supply chain. Having said, I think technology also evolved at that point, or parallelly, I would say. What I used to do when I joined as a purchase person, what I used to do on a piece of paper, like planning used to be on piece of paper. We could make few charts, work it out daily, monthly. We want to change, use pencil, rubber, and work out of that. today, with all this complexity, we wouldn't have been able to manage had the technology not grown up to that extent.
Yes.
Now, and one major thing in technology is ERP.
Mm.
Now, today, I can't see or can't imagine any pharma company working without an ERP.
Absolutely.
And ERP means which has an integrated platform. It can do forecasting, it can do manufacturing planning, it can do distribution planning, it can do sales, invoicing, warehousing, everything.
Mm.
And it's all on the integrated platform so that you can sit in any place and watch, observe, monitor, take corrective action. So one big thing which I feel in technology, which has changed, is the ERP, which was brilliant.
Mm.
Otherwise, let's say in Ranbaxy, we used to manufacture more than 5,000 SKUs. And those were manufactured or rather sold in more than 100 countries around the world.
Mm.
They were manufactured in 14 different manufacturing plants, of which 5 were in India and 9 were outside India.
Mm.
Now, managing this whole complex in a dynamic fashion, where there is a dynamic market, you can't think without having the support of a technology. So, while there is a support of ERP, SAP, and additional features of SAP, you definitely now need something beyond that.
Correct. And what about, now I was speaking to several supply chain heads earlier. There is a lot of use of artificial intelligence in your manufacturing process, machine learning, robotics. There's talk of drones being used to, get products into the factories and take them out. Some of your thoughts?
Exactly. I think, as I was telling you, the technology was evolving along with supply chain, and it helped in managing supply chain. As we are entering into new era, to me, the competition is becoming more and more fierce. Very much. And therefore, in that competition, if you have to still manage your profits, you have to still manage your speed of servicing, you have to still manage your customer satisfaction, you have to go beyond, today I can say, the mundane ERP structure. Because ERP is a good integrated system, which gives you end-to-end visibility. But in terms of intelligence, it's not so much. And all those aspects you mentioned brings in a lot of intelligence into the supply chain. So let's take one by one. Now, artificial intelligence. What artificial intelligence does for Pharma? Artificial intelligence does, to me, it does two things.
Correct.
In a top level. One, it automates mundane tasks or repetitive tasks or processes automatically. And thereby avoiding any mistake, thereby increasing the speed, everything. Second thing it does, it speeds up hugely the data analytics. Now, when it speeds up the data analytics, imagine you're trying to do demand forecasting of different markets, 100 markets you have. In each market, each SKU, you have to forecast a demand. Now, it has a capability to look at all the data which are relevant for demand forecasting, not only just the traditional statistical, last 3 years sales figure, but beyond that, and come out with a better figure or more reliable figure of demand, which AI can do. And let's talk about production. Optimization of the scheduling is again another thing. You find when you manufacture multiple SKUs, you generally land up with some machine underutilizing, some machines overloaded and therefore getting delayed. But optimizing the whole thing is what AI can do. Similarly, optimizing of routing in distribution, AI can. Now, these are the places where AI is being utilized in a big way. Now, let's talk about robotics. I think you rightly said there are many people who are going for automated warehouse. Now, in automated warehousing, robotics play wonders. Now, let's a simple job of picking. You have 10,000 SKUs around in a warehouse, and you need to pick up the one which your customer needs. Now, the picking up without error and picking up quick, I think these are the two things which robots do it excellently. And this results into better warehouse management, better inventory management, better servicing, less, you can say, customer complaints. So that is where I think robotics is helping in supply chain.
Fascinating.
Now, when it comes to drones, the way I look at it is, if I have to look at the supply chain end to end, I think the most inefficient portion, or you can say most expensive portion of the supply chain, is the last mile of this. When you have to actually deliver to the end customer, that last mile is most expensive and most inefficient.
Right.
Now, whatever you do, supply chain. Now, I believe drones is the answer. Probably it has not come to that stage today in terms of usage, but it has that potential and capability to deliver these small packs, individualized, to the end customer quickly and in a cost-effective manner. And as we go into the future, I'm sure this will change some of this, what you call challenges of the supply chain.
Very interesting. So I've got time for two more questions for you. My next question is from the perspective of, all these incredible e-commerce platforms that have come into the pharmacy world.
Right.
How are these platforms going to change supply chains? Because earlier you were delivering to 800,000 retailers. Right. Now it is a few platforms delivering to large customers.
Right. Well, first thing is, because of this complexity, I can see that the whole thing will now be managed digitally.
Okay.
There will be very less intervention from the manual. One. Secondly, these things, some of these platforms, whether it is ERP or whether it is some of this robotics and other things, we thought has already changed supply chain quite a lot, and it's changing. I'll give an example. Like in e-commerce, one of the things which people talk about is reverse auction. Now, reverse auction is something which in Ranbaxy, we used it some 10, 12 years back and consistently over 5 to 7 years. The reverse auction has a capability to increase the span and the speed of the process, procurement process. Apart from the fact that it makes the procurement process completely transparent. And we used it in Ranbaxy, whereby we could do a lot of cost saving in a buying of indirect material. Okay. Also, in case of direct material, where few of the B and C class items, we could achieve that. So, like that, technology is useful in multiple ways, whether it is procurement, whether it is manufacturing, whether it is distribution, or whether it is ensuring that you deliver the goods on the right time and right quantity.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And my last question to you, and this relates to the government. What role should the government be playing to make our supply chains much more efficient?
Okay. If I have to talk about government, I look at it in this way. One is, of course, in operational supply chain, there is a little role which government plays, but it does play a role. Let's say, for example, when I was supply chain head 2 decades or 3 decades back, based in Bombay, if I send one truck to Calcutta, one full load of truck to Calcutta of pharmaceutical goods, it will take 7 days, 7 to 10 days to reach Calcutta. Today, now, whether it's indirectly or so, what government has done, it can come back in 7 days after delivery. The infrastructure, whether the highways are improved, whether there were toll nakas, where there were a lot of restrictions, where a truck used to be stopped at every stage. All that is gone. That is something which government has done and will keep on. But when it comes to something like what we saw, let's say pandemic, generally we don't see it is the responsibility of the government to make sure that the drugs are available. But in a situation, like critical situation, let's say either it is related with the national security, either it is related, in terms of pandemic. It is also a responsibility of the government to work in such a way that the products are available into the country.
Right.
And therefore, whatever it means in terms of, utilizing your political connection, keeping the relationship good, multiple things go.
Fascinating.
Also, one more thing is, let's say, we talked about dependence on China. I believe government has a major role to play over there. With whatever happened, now globalization was definitely a good thing. But it has definitely resulted in something when we find that the dependence on such a critical medicines is becoming developed on one country. I think government needs to intervene. It has intervened, but now, and now let's see in future how it develops, how people create big capacities in India. Currently, the scheme is working. The other thing. One more thing I would like to add. Today, the supply chains are not, we call it supply chain, but they're not like within national or within the company.
True.
Supply chain is global. There are many products where you will find at least one component has an origin from another country, either component or starting material of that component. Now, all that countries affect your supply chain. So if there's any adverse event in that country happens, your supply chain gets affected.
Interesting.
Or to put it differently, if there is a political relationship with that government, if government manage it well, your supply chain gets affected. And therefore, government has to get into this.
Fascinating. Govind, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you. I mean, I've learned something absolutely new about supply chains today. And I think what was amazing was how so easily you just said that you almost made the supply chain function into a profit center because you are contributing large amounts of profit to the company, which never used to be the case.
Right.
Thank you again for so much sharing and good luck to you.
Thank you, Ashutosh. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Supply Chain Labs was founded in 2019 by investment firm Loomis Partners to identify, collaborate, and invest in 50 of the best supply chain startups over a 5-year discovery period. Supply chain is one of the most core areas for any segment of the economy, and even more so in a large and growing country like India, which needs deep innovation to help bridge the gaps in the physical supply chain, currently amplified even more so with COVID. In a short time frame of 2 years, Supply Chain Labs is already known as India's first and most widely recognized supply chain focused fund and fellowship. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.